News First, Newsline Prime with Faraz Shauketaly.
And a very good evening to you. This is Newsline Prime, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dorset Street in Colombo. And of course we broadcast on TV1, which is a proud member of the Capital Maharaja Group. Now then, the political crisis continues. It's been captivating, but some people have got fed up with the behavior of the largely elected officials occupying a place called the Parliament, which has been reduced to something almost of a joke. But to discuss the whole process and to do a sort of recap on everything that has happened, we have somebody quite well versed in all these matters. Mr. Chrishmal and Faraz is right here. Good evening, Chrishmal.
Good evening, Faraz. Good to be here.
Thank you very much for being on Newsline Prime. First time in the evening, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's a long stretch today. Dawasa and Newsline.
That's right. Yes.
You put me on a double shift.
Double shift. Thank you, though. You're doing your bit for the people in the country. Now then, let's start at the beginning, shall we? It's a good place to start anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Prime Minister, the President sacked one Prime Minister and appointed another. How constitutional or not was that?
Yeah. May I, Faraz, with your permission, answer that question because we've been seeing a whole lot of negativity, particularly today and yesterday, in our House of Parliament, as you very correctly put in. May I just take the positive first?
Yeah.
So that our viewers, and particularly those international journalists who seem to be following us around, trying to take a message to the rest of the world that Sri Lanka is a banana republic and we don't have a law. Yes, we have several problems which we'll talk of our parliament and our legislators later, but the positive is that, remember, a few days ago, the Lordship of the Supreme Court looked at the issue. The constitution, which is supreme in this country, says that all three organs of government are inferior to the constitution. The rule of law in this country prevails, and that is a good message. That stay order granted, we can discuss it later, but the positive is that to all those people who are trying to criticize us, I say for us, no, we have proven, yes, we have problems, but in this country, in this republic, still democracy prevails, the rule of law prevails, the rule of the constitution prevails, particularly with the decision of the Lordship of the Supreme Court.
I'm very glad that you're mentioning it, because really there is no law and order breakdown in Sri Lanka.
Because things are happening.
And the travel advisories are completely uncalled for.
This is what I mean. Now, one may say, well, Chrishmal may have had a different constitutional view. Yes, and I will get to that. But that is why we bow down to the rule of law. The three organs of government, very quickly, whether they are legislators in House of Parliament, whether the executive president of the cabinet, the executive branch, or the legal branch, judicial branch, all of us take an office on what? The supreme law. We say with our honor, we respect and are bound to honor this constitution and respect the rule of law. And that is why, even though I may hold a different constitutional view, the order of the Supreme Court is valuable to show the world that democracy, the rule of law prevails. Now for us, your question. I have said this several times. There is nothing unconstitutional. That's our system of government in Sri Lanka. Some people who look at this from their various political ideology or sunglasses, green or red or blue, may see it differently. The law is that in our country we don't have a Westminster style system of government where the people elect a prime minister. People do not elect a prime minister. People don't elect a majority to install a government, unlike in England. What happens is we elect 225 legislators to the House of Parliament. From that for us, His Excellency the President, we elect the Executive President through another vote, a direct vote. Then we tell the Executive President, we have given you executive power, you form a government. That is why under 42, the President picks a Prime Minister. That's why under 43, the President picks the ministers. So it's a President that forms a government. Why Article 42.1? In the Republic, the government is set out as a cabinet of ministers. 42.1. It's very, very clear. And that is what we should be guided by. May I quickly read 42.1 for us?
Please.
There shall be a cabinet of ministers charged with the direction and control of the government of the Republic. So what is the government of the Republic? The cabinet of ministers.
Yeah.
And who appoints the cabinet of ministers? The president. And 42(4) says the president puts a man to be prime minister, which we are over several provisions here, which we can argue if we want later. The president has the right to remove, and there are automatic removals like when the cabinet goes off. That is law. Yeah. But very simply, what is the government in our republic? The cabinet. Who appoints the cabinet? The president. Who's the head of the cabinet? The president. Who's the head of the government? The president. That's the system we have. So if you want to blame on, we have to change the system. Faraz, you remember?
Yes. I'm tempted to remember what Lord Naseby said. He said,
it may be unusual.
It may be unusual.
But there's nothing unconstitutional.
But there's nothing unconstitutional. I like the way he's put that bit.
Yes.
You know. But I wanted to ask you this. How important are those words that says the president shall appoint a member who in his opinion.
Precisely, in his opinion.
There's nothing about floor shows
and throwing up arms. I'll tell you how it works. How the constitution meant to work is this.
Yeah.
Now, because the president is the head of the cabinet,
yeah,
he picks a man. The whole problem comes because we called him prime minister.
Right.
In UK, when you say prime minister primus inter pares, refers to the first amongst equals there.
Yeah.
But he's a prime minister. It's his government.
Yeah.
He goes and asks the Her Royal Highness, the Queen, your Honour, your Majesty, may I form your government?
Yeah.
The prime minister. They don't have a president.
Yeah.
Here, our prime minister doesn't go and ask the president to form a government.
Indeed.
The president forms the government. So actually, if we had called our prime minister executive assistant to the president without calling him prime minister, this problem wouldn't have arisen because our prime minister, in terms of our law, is just another member of the cabinet.
Right.
Right, but he's called a prime minister. Remember 19th and 20th amendments, we wanted to make the prime minister the head of the cabinet. No. What did the Supreme Court say? They said you can't by a constitutional amendment come and try to give the powers of the president as head of the government, head of the cabinet to prime minister. Go to the people, get their approval at a referendum, then you can amend the constitution. But we didn't do that.
Indeed.
For whatever reason, they did not at that time, when they wanted to make the prime minister the head of the cabinet, didn't go to the people and ask them, shall we do this? They may have shied away from an election, for whatever reason. Now, this is the constitution we have. So what I'm trying to say first is, this is the law we have. We have to follow that. If we have a problem with it, we have to amend the law. Secondly, Faraz, what I wanted to say was, because the president has the power to do that, and if someone thought that there was something wrong in that appointment of the Honourable Present Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and the removal of the former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, they ought to have gone to the only place that can interpret the constitution, which is the Supreme Court.
Indeed.
You see, Article 125 says, it is only the Supreme Court in this republic that can interpret any provisions that is the constitution that has a problem.
Right.
The speaker can't go to interpret the constitution and say, I don't accept that what the president has done is constitutional. He has no right to do that.
And neither, does he have a right to go to the Attorney General?
He can ask for an opinion from the Honourable Attorney General.
Right.
Similarly, even His Excellency the President, with all the powers we have given him, can't interpret the constitution.
Right.
Even if His Excellency has a problem, he must refer it to the Supreme Court.
So why not the Speaker go to the Supreme Court?
If the Speaker had an issue, actually it's not the Speaker who has the issue, no. If, say, the former Prime Minister, former Honourable Prime Minister says that his removal was unlawful in terms of the Constitution, what ought to have happened? They should have gone to court and challenged that, no. Then what I say is the problems that flow for us flow from that. Then what happens? The Honourable Speaker decides, I am going to interpret the Constitution, and he doesn't accept. One day he accepts, second day he doesn't accept. Then the President prorogues Parliament. Then it comes to a stage where there is some threat that the parliamentarians will do exactly what they are doing today, as the President dissolves Parliament. Then that goes before the Supreme Court. Now that's a matter that is before the Supreme Court. So that's basically the chronology of events for us.
What has happened.
We must understand what our system of government is before we start complaining. This is what the Constitution says.
Right. So why, if it is so sort of clear, why has the dissolution gazette order, the proclamation...
There are the questions that is different. In one place, because there is a case in the Supreme Court for us which is due for determination.
It mustn't really.
And I also happen to represent the party in it. I don't think it's fair for me to prejudge what is sub judice, which even the parliament actually can't do in terms of standing order. So let's not discuss. But I'll just say in general, the points brought before the Supreme Court are.
But in general terms, why would the
what I'm trying
Supreme
to say, the executive powers of the president in one chapter says His Excellency President can dissolve, is not qualified, there is no proviso, he can dissolve parliament. Under the legislative powers chapter, there is another area where there is a procedure given where His Excellency President must, after 4.5 years, dissolve. So that's a conflict that's presently before court.
So that's what is being determined
That's
now.
being determined.
All right. I want to ask you this. Now, whilst the stay order is in place, the dissolution, the Gazette order on dissolution is now put on hold. Does that, whilst it's on hold, does it mean that the prorogation order, which was obviously superseded by the dissolution, now that the dissolution is on hold, do we return back? Does the proroguing Gazette come alive again?
Proroguing Gazette became alive up to the 14th. Why? Because what an interim order does is, in a fundamental application, as you know, leave to proceed. There is a certain stage where you have to show the judges prima facie, at first glance, that there is a case to be looked at. That's just this case I said. There appears to be a conflict that the judges, so the case is not decided. No judgment has been passed. The case has to be heard. Both sides have to be heard. Arguments must be heard. Objections, counter objections, written submissions, all of this have to be done. In December, they will give a judgment. But until that judgment is given, the party coming to court can say, look, even though you may give a judgment in December, by that time everything would have happened and my rights would be infringed, then Supreme Court will give a interim order to maintain the status quo. Now what is the status quo here? When the lordships of the Supreme Court said we are staying the Gazette dissolving Parliament and we are staying the calling for nomination for elections, so you move to status quo ante. Ante meaning previous. Status quo ante, that problem that occurred was Parliament was prorogued. So that is why on the 14th they went back to Parliament based on that, because you reverted to status quo ante, and so on the 14th there was a prorogation order previously of His Excellency President that said I'm proroguing and to be called again on the 14th. That's why they went to Parliament yesterday. Yesterday they went to Parliament and the whole fracas took place. So, excuse me, so that's what happened.
On Newsline Prime and on Newsline during the day, we encourage our viewers to send us questions by SMS 0772 300 305. Please don't call it. At the moment, you can SMS us, and preferably SMS as opposed to WhatsApp, because otherwise I have to keep flipping through screens. Now then, and I'm sure Control Room will play you the thing, 0772 300 305. And one of the first questions that has come on here, Chrishmal, is asking your view about this. Under these bizarre circumstances, does the President have the power to dissolve Parliament again? Thank you.
Good question, who asked it? Well, I wouldn't, if I were advising His Excellency the President, now that one dissolution order is being challenged before the Lordship of the Supreme Court, which is the judicial arm of government, I would not advise His Excellency to go try dissolving Parliament again, because there is a question whether His Excellency can or he can't. So that's being decided. So I wouldn't advise that. But of course, remember, I don't want to give advice to His Excellency on air. But there is also a question where if it comes to a situation like say today, I have given certain orders which are not being followed by the House of Legislature. Now we have given a duty to His Excellency at the amended Article 33 after the 19th Amendment. We not even a power, a duty, obligation to us. We, the people had told him, you are responsible to Parliament to make sure the Constitution is upheld. If His Excellency feels, look, the people have given me a duty by direct vote and I can't conduct that duty, His Excellency has a right under the same Constitution to refer the matter to the people by way of a referendum. If His Excellency feels, for example, look, please tell me how to solve this problem. Can you please tell me, I have given orders, I have appointed Prime Minister, the Speaker is not accepting it. And the old Prime Minister is saying, I'm still Prime Minister, I'm not going. Then I tried to get into Parliament, and the Parliament they are fighting each other, no motions are being carried. One side is saying it was carried, other side is saying the motion was not carried properly. So please tell me, do you all want new election or not? That may be a question that His Excellency can refer by way of referendum to the people, because he has the power to do that. But Faraz, may I, with your permission, take 1 minute and explain why this entire fiasco happens, in my opinion, Faraz. It's our system. You see, we elect legislators to make law, 225. But very funnily, we have in our constitution asked His Excellency the President to pick a cabinet, the executive arm of government, from this legislature. From Parliament, we have asked him to pick a cabinet and give ministerships to ministers. So what happens? Why do they always cross over and take ministries? Because they believe just being a member of Parliament is not good enough. Only when you are a minister do I get the perks, the contracts, the tenders, to have ministers and servants and all that. But if, like America, for example, if we picked our cabinet, executive branch, out of Parliament, in the United States, neither Congress nor Senate can have the secretaries of state. The President picks them outside of the entire House of Congress. Then we will actually, I think in our Parliament, we'll have members who go in for doing the very boring job of lawmaking, which doesn't have all the, all the lucrativeness of a minister. Then the ministers can say outside the Parliament, with the President they can meet somewhere in the cabinet, and the Parliament can have a system to check the minister's activity also, like several other places. This whole problem arises, why do they cross over? Why are the people saying bribes are offered, millions are offered, and when they cross over they get a ministry, That is because we picked our cabinet of ministers from the legislature. So executive is picked from our legislature. If we can find a system to divorce the two, I think we can actually start law making in this country.
That's where it is.
That's where it is.
Now then, another question. I'm not going to take that. What happens if the Supreme Court decides that it's fair and square and constitutional that Parliament was dissolved? What happens then?
So then Parliament stands dissolved and you have to go for an election.
But what happens in between?
That is why, Faraz, there are standing orders in Parliament. Parliament is governed by their own internal standing orders, The constitution and laws are supreme, but the Parliament has a procedure. And from what I know of this, I have never been to Parliament, so I don't know what the everyday. There are conventions in Parliament also. There, I believe there is a convention and a standing orders in Parliament to say that they will not touch matters that are sub judice. That are matters that are being presently decided by in court. They will not take any action that will stifle that.
So, but that's exactly what...
So that's what I'm trying to say. I actually don't think right now, because if, like you say, Parliament in December, the Lordships were to hold that it was correct for His Excellency the President to have dissolved Parliament, that they ought to have gone for elections. Everything that they have done until then is going to be a constitutional question. Whether there is, because technically there is a stay order so they can continue Parliament. But once again, Parliament standing orders are matters that are sub judice, subject to decision we will not touch.
So for that to happen, we need a very independent Parliament. We need an independent Speaker.
And we need some parliamentarians working with responsibility.
Indeed, when certainly their behaviour yesterday and today is anything but responsible. Totally shameful. Can you answer throw some light on the actions of the Speaker?
The Honourable Speaker, if I were the Honourable Speaker, at the very outset, without trying to interpret the Constitution, which I don't have the right to do, and also without trying to tell the Executive President, I'm not going to accept your appointment, because the Executive President has the right to appoint a Prime Minister, I would have perhaps taken a more independent stand and said, look, the executive branch of government has done something that appears to be constitutional. If someone is saying it's unconstitutional, please go and challenge it in the right forum. But in so far as I'm concerned, I'm duty bound to accept what the executive branch of government has done. Because it's not up to the Honourable Speaker in the Constitution to interpret the Constitution. Nor does the Constitution give a right to the Honourable Speaker to accept or not accept what the Executive President does. That's all it. What ought to have happened then is, that then our Constitution will work. Then what happens is, Now say, for example, there is a position that the present Honorable Prime Minister Rajapaksa doesn't have majority, no? Then those who say they have a majority would have brought a vote of no confidence under 48-2. Then
at that time.
And that would have carried in the ordinary process, not the way they're shouting and what they're doing now. Some party saying the vote was not carried, other party saying vote was properly carried. Then, and had they lost that vote of no confidence, then the cabinet would have fallen. And the Prime Minister, just like Prime Minister Wickramasinghe, with the cabinet, that Honorable Mahinda Rajapaksa Prime Minister will also go and walked off. And then His Excellency President has to appoint a new Prime Minister. That's how the law is meant to work in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Without doing that, when the Honorable Speaker started saying, I'm not going to accept your appointment, then, in my opinion, he was transgressing the Constitution. And that now has led to where we are now.
Indeed.
And may I just say one more thing, Faraz, on that particular point?
Yeah.
You see, executive government is meant to work in a particular fashion in terms of this Constitution.
Yes.
And we must take every step available to us in this Constitution.
Right.
And the people who are watching and who are, I've seen so many Facebook and WhatsApp comments today, the whole day, blaming these parliamentarians, fighting each other and dragging chairs and all that. Who sends them there? I am assured that now you call a majority power and majority power in parliament and all that. The majority of this country, of some voting public of from 15 million, the majority of you elect these people and send them there. And then you complain that they're behaving not the legislators that you want them to be. So think about that.
Right, and here let's take this. We're coming towards the end, sort of. We've got a few 7 minutes left. It says, please tell us very plainly who should be in power now. We are all confused. Thank you for that brilliant question.
I am also somewhat, legally I'm trying to analyze this to come out of the confusion, and I'm only trying to look at the four corners of the Constitution. So within the Constitution I can say, it is constitutional in my opinion, the appointment of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet done by His Excellency President. I'm talking of the present Honorable Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and the Cabinet, I believe have been done constitutionally.
Yes.
So in my interpretation of the Constitution, until the so-called vote that was taken in Parliament. Now, there is a question. One side says that the vote was properly taken. The other side says the vote was not properly taken. Now, in such a situation, I am sorry, I cannot give you an answer whether appointment is correct. I say appointment in terms of the Constitution is done. And the government was established by His Excellency President. But as to whether a vote of no confidence had been passed on them or not, within the parliamentary standing orders they must decide. And ultimately even His Excellency President can't take a decision on that because Parliament alone must decide that. But remember, we have a president in this country, very exceptional cases where although we believe in a separation of powers, one institution does not encroach or interfere into the affairs of another. When there is a manifest violation of the Constitution that takes place by one institution, the other institution will come and check it. Two examples I'll give you very quickly. Around 2002, when an impeachment order was brought before, tried to be tabled in Parliament, the Supreme Court gave an order staying it. That was one institution taking the other. Very recently, remember in 2012 when the then Chief Justice was impeached, the Supreme Court, we lawyers went and complained to the Supreme Court saying Parliament is doing something unlawful. It was lawful for the Parliament to bring a motion of impeachment. They have the right to do that. They can impeach a judge. They can bring the motion. But when parliamentarians started sitting in judgment and inquiring into whether she was guilty or not, that's the thing to be done by the judicial arm of government. Then they were transgressing the Constitution. Then their Lordship the Supreme Court heard us and went and said that Parliament is now transgressing the Constitution. So it may, I don't know, it may come to a situation where the Lordship of the Supreme Court will have to think whether the Constitution is being violated by one of the arms of government.
Can a normal citizen go to the Supreme Court against the Speaker?
I wouldn't like to say yes or no to that because remember, I've said legislative arm of government is beyond the touch of the Supreme Court. It's only executive power that can be checked by the Supreme Court. But there are exceptional circumstances that I said. Like I said before. So yes, a citizen may go and complain to the Supreme Court, not about the Speaker alone, that the actions of this legislature now is violating the constitutional right that we the people have. Because
Right.
remember, in our republic, we are supreme. We are the sovereign power.
The people.
That is why I actually feel it may be much better, because again, if you go to court also, you're going to another arm of government that we have given power to know. Why not come back to us, the authority of all this power, and say, look, you all decide a parliament.
As in have an election.
Have an election. Because this is not good for us at all. One side accepting, one side not accepting, and nothing is happening.
Do you agree that this is the most partisan speaker in the history of Sri Lanka?
That's a personal.
Is that a kind of a somebody's opinion?
I have been trying throughout the last 2 weeks. You would have seen me on several channels, even some international media asked me. I like to keep this constitutional. I
quite agree with you. Now then, let me ask you this, because you mentioned the word international.
Yeah.
Now, Chrishmal, you know, the House of Commons had a debate on Sri Lanka, and they spoke about the current situation here, and they called for the president to act constitutionally and so on and so forth and whatever.
Completely wrong.
But the same House of Commons has been silent and voiceless when it comes to the non-holding of elections in the provincial councils. They're silent on that. They're silent on several departures from good democratic process. So if they're coming here to talk about one thing, I don't think, like Mr. Kanageswaran said in the Supreme Court, I don't think that they need to look at what's happening in dismembered parts like, unfortunately, Jammu Kashmir.
Absolutely.
Which is what Mr. Kanageswaran said.
Faraz, I must tell all those parliamentarians in the UK House of Commons, we got independence from you in 1948. No House of Commons need to tell us how to run our affairs. Of course, there's a diplomatic way of expressing concern.
Indeed.
And that diplomacy is a very, very subtle art. There is a way you respect sovereign rights of nation states. We are a republic that has sovereignty in the people. We have our territorial integrity. We do not need some other country to come and tell us to open parliament or close parliament or tell the speaker to go or not go. You follow?
Yes.
There is a diplomatic way of saying things. You can of course express some concern. But I would like to, Faraz, take grave exception to this statement of some other country trying to tell the president what to do, the speaker what to do, the parliament what they very soon they'll be telling the court also what to do. We are a sovereign nation, and I think very seriously we need to get a team of Sri Lankans to tell the world, look, we will sort our own affairs, we are not going to wash our dirty linen in public. And very sadly, some of our fellows are also involved in taking this linen public and going and trying to the international press, saying this is what's happening in our country. We have a rule of law, as the logical Supreme Court has shown just a few days ago. The law will take its own course, and if we have problems, the Constitution provides a way in which we can solve it. There are provisions that are available. We do not need any country coming and telling us how to run our country.
Bravo. Well said. Well said indeed. Would you urge all citizens of Sri Lanka to write a letter, at least to the British ambassador in Colombo, and express their significant displeasure?
May I remind you, Farah, on that point, a few years ago, when I was a child in school, one of our former presidents, Premadasa, not for this, when the UK ambassador tried to intervene, Gladstone tried to intervene in some provincial council election and made a comment that the election was being held, and immediately persona non grata and sent him and told UK, take this fellow. That's the level with which we must deal with foreign intervention like this.
We remember Ranasinghe Premadasa with
I respect him for that.
With respect, with joy, and with great expectation from the Premadasa name. We are going to wrap up. Chrishmal and Warnasuriya, thank you ever so much.
Always good.
Thank you. Wonderful having you on our network.
Always good to be.
And that's the way it was on Newsline Prime. We'll leave you with this message about our country first. One nation, one country, Sri Lanka. That's it. Take care. Good night and God bless.
News First, Newsline Prime with Faraz, Shauketaly.